Well, it is time for another top 10 list, and this is a top 10. I don't know if top 10 really fits this, but it is a list of 10 books of essays. And this is one I was kind of struggling with exactly what to call this list of books. But this is one that I think a lot of you will appreciate because this is a mainly books that are compilations of essays by multiple authors. There's a couple of exceptions in this, but most of these are compilations of a variety of authors, all contributing articles and things like that. And before anybody says it in the comment section, I am well aware of the disinfo books, the You Are Being Lied To, and Everything You Know Is Wrong, and I have some of those. But these are my favorites in that genre of book. So one of the things that I like about this kind of book, before I really dive in here, is a lot of these are shorter articles. And back, especially when I used to do a lot of traveling for work, these were great books to have with me on the road. And also when I was doing work around my own personal workshop, when I was waiting for something to dry or whatever, and I'd pull out one of these and read one of the articles. So a lot of these were only like 10, 20-page articles, pretty easy to digest stuff. And then the best part about this, for those of you out there jumping into all of this information, is a lot of this is a good kind of tip of the iceberg to find out about a lot of other topics. So a lot of these are kind of entry points to a lot of subject matter you may not have heard about before. And that's kind of how it was with me. Now, let me preface this by saying, am I in lockstep with everything in all of these books? Of course not. But again, the whole point of this is exposing yourself to new knowledge and new ideas and sifting through that. And to do this and do this properly, obviously it requires a fair amount of discernment. As I mentioned in my video a couple of weeks ago or so about poisoning the well. So if you missed that, I'll link that on the end screen. But these are my favorite compilation books of just different essays. And one of these is fairly new, and I really need to come back and just do a review on it by itself. But the rest of these have been in my library for some over 20 years. But and funny thing, several people have said, there's a chain of books that I like to frequent that I mention in a lot of my videos called Half Price Books. I am not a paid spokesman for Half Price Books. I don't have any kind of deal there. And as I mentioned in the comment section yesterday, Half Price Books has since been bought out. They used to be a smaller family-owned chain, started in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And now their ownership would probably pay me not to talk about them in my videos because I'm sure this is not the attention they want on their book operation. But Half Price Books, for all its corporate flaws, is still a really good place to find a lot of rare books. And the main reason why I gravitate towards them is their stores are all laid out in a nice configuration where you can find certain subject matter. And I think over in the member section, I did a whole shopping tutorial about what I look for, because a lot of you that are in close to a Half Price Books, always good to know, because you just go in, and really this goes for any used bookstore. So I'm not plugging Half Price Books exclusively there, but with any used bookstore, that's the beautiful thing about it, is the inventory changes all the time. So find a few good used bookstores and find some of the key sections like the political science section, the current events section, if they have a speculative section or anything like that, and make your rounds to all those spots. I have about half a dozen main spots that I hit in a Half Price Books or any bookstore looking for new material. And it's always kind of sad too, and I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent here about book buying, but some of these I've come into, like some of my better parts of my book collection are from where you could probably tell someone had just died and some unsympathetic relatives just unceremoniously dumped their books at Half Price Books. Great for us, but really sad and tragic for the dude that collected those books all his life, and probably his relatives sold them for probably pennies on the dollar. So anyway, without further ado, this is Secret and Suppressed, edited by Jim Keith, and this was put out by Feral House. And this one is from, obviously, late 90s if it was edited by Jim Keith, because he passed away in 98 or 9, I believe. This is from 1993, and this has some excellent articles on like the Iraq War, like a lot of back then in 1993, people were just figuring out some of the things about the ambassador, I believe this is the ambassador, April Gillespie, effectively giving Saddam Hussein the green light to go into Kuwait, saying your Arab affairs are we don't want to get involved in that, thus making Saddam Hussein believe that the United States was not concerned about his going into Kuwait. And the reason Saddam Hussein went into Kuwait was, of course, the slant drilling happening in Kuwait into Iraqi oil fields. So that's one of those important articles that you realize there's a lot more to a lot of modern warfare than we're told through our television machine. So there's that. There's also an excellent article about the Jonestown. I think this is one of the first books that I read that kind of blew the lid off the narrative that I'd always thought about Jonestown, that it was all a bunch of suicides, that everybody was just drinking the literal Kool-Aid. That's, of course, where you get drinking the Kool-Aid, which really, it was, I believe, Flavor Aid that was, I think, laced with like strychnine or something. And then allegedly everyone willfully drank this to unalive themselves. But one of the account in here from John Judge is all about how all the problems with the official narrative of the Jonestown account. And I have some other books on Jonestown that I've reviewed elsewhere on the channel, so definitely check those out. If you just search Jonestown on my main channel page, you'll find that. But this was one of the books that introduced me to that, because up until this, I was of the mind that Jonestown was pretty much open shut exactly as advertised. And this was a good book to open my eyes to that line of research. Now, the follow-up to this came out in the 2000, I think this is from 2010, or no, 2008. And this is Secret and Suppressed 2. And it's exactly what it says. It's a follow-up to this book. More articles by a variety of different authors. And this was how I found out about Richard Sauter's follow-up book, Hidden in Plain Sight, which was his third book about underground bases. He has an article in here. Excellent article. And then there's also, our aliens and their technology underground and undersea. So excellent article about underground and undersea bases. Lots of stuff in this one that I'm trying to think of the main things that some of you might be curious about, but that was the main one that jumped out at me. And I'm just going to look through the table of contents really quick. I looked at it, believe it or not, before I started the video, but just this again has an article about Jonestown, exposing the Nazi International by Joseph P. Farrell. I know some of you have mentioned his work before. This was the first time I'd heard of him. And then I ran off and got one of his books. So again, excellent compilation of a lot of different authors. This is one of those that if you're like me, you find this is how you introduce yourself to some of these authors, especially back pre-internet. I would get some of these, and that was my introduction to a lot of things. But this one, oddly enough, I actually picked this one up at a gun show in Dallas, because back in the 90s and the early 2000s, there used to be a few different sellers that would make the rounds to, they're probably feds, but they would make the rounds to different gun shows, and they had an amazing selection of books. And, you know, everything from the incredibly fringe stuff about, improvised weapons to things like this. So that's where I actually got this. And it's kind of sad. I went to a gun show in Amarillo back in over the winter, and not near the same, not near the material like this kind of stuff that I like to go see. So anyway, moving right along, this is Yuri Dalbinko, I think I'm saying his name right, Bushwhacked: Inside Stories of True Conspiracy. And this is one from 2002, and let's see. This one has a, one of you had mentioned something about remote viewing. This has an excellent article about remote viewing. Also, some interesting articles about DynCorp. Now, this is all by Yuri Dalbinko. I think I'm saying his name right. It's not multiple authors, but still excellent. And again, and there is the clock. But still excellent information. And again, really a nice jumping off point for a lot of other research. So a good way to introduce yourself to a lot of topics. But the DynCorp section has a lot of stuff about DynCorp's involvement in a lot of shady stuff. And I'm trying to remember, I think like some human trafficking and things like that. And that, of course, has resurfaced lately with some of the Erica Kirk connections and things like that. So Dirty Tricks, Inc., the DynCorp government connection. That's part of it there. But anyway, excellent book. This is one that surprised me. I actually found this at Half Price Books. And there are certain topics I'll always flip through to see, and you can always kind of tell if somebody's kind of controlled opposition or what they're kind of walking around. And when they have a pretty good broad collection of articles, that's a pretty good sign. Typically, like conspiracy books, if they'll at least address something like the USS Liberty, you have a pretty good idea that they're at least open-minded in their approach. Now, this was one of my first ritual abuse books that I got back in 2009. And I've mentioned this before, and you can watch some of my other list books about ritual abuse stuff that where I talk more about how I got into all of that. But this is one I was just going on Amazon looking to see what was out there. And I found this. This is actually edited by Randy Noblitt and his wife, I believe. And this is another one with multiple articles about ritual abuse and people treating ritual abuse. So excellent. Again, it's a mixed bag. There's some articles in here that are kind of and then there's some like saying terrorism is the new SRA of the 21st century and things like that you're like, And you can make a guess about some things about that author and their leanings there. But the rest of it is pretty solid material about a lot of rings, Epstein-esque kind of connections and things like that. That's my wording, not theirs. But there is an article in here, one of them that I had dog-eared, that there's several in here that you think, man, I wish there was a full-length book on that. And this was published, I think this was published in like 2009. Let me just double check, 2008. But chapter 17 is recognizing and treating survivors of abuse by organized criminal groups. So anytime anything like that is gold when you find authors that are actually addressing multiple offender or multiple perpetrator cases like that. So good, again, another good kind of jumping off point and a good way to find a lot of these authors. And then, of course, you can go to Amazon or wherever and look up some of their other material. Now, this is The Medusa File by Craig Roberts. And Craig Roberts also wrote the, I think it was, which one? I can't think of the name. It's about the assassination of Kennedy, and he wrote a whole breakdown of it from the standpoint of a police sniper. And it's actually really good. That was another one of those JFK books that I didn't expect to be as good as it was. But Craig Roberts, after I finished his other book, and I wish I could think of the name right now, I looked him up on Amazon, clicked on his name, and found the Medusa File. And the Medusa File is it's all articles by him, but a lot of really good stuff in here. One of them is, let's see, there's a couple that I wanted to mention that I thought you all might appreciate. This is the main one. Excuse me. This is on page 72. This is Operation Monarch and the Finder's Case. And that alone, it's worth getting the book for. He goes over some of the original leaked documents on the Finders, and the way, I don't want to get too much into the Finder's Case. I'll see if I can link to a video at the end screen where I go into that more in depth. But the Finder's Case is just a crazy case, regardless of anything else you're looking at. Just even if you strain out all the other things and say, you know, let's just look at the Finder's Case, there is no benign reading of that information. And that's kind of how you can tell if somebody's suspect. If they're trying to whitewash the whole Finder's Case, you know something is up. And the way it was originally exposed, the Finder's Case, was the documents were leaked by some of the investigators that were working on it. And what happened was essentially these children were seen at a park in Florida, and with these two guys in a van that were kind of letting the kids take a break in the park. And some of the people were disturbed enough by the behavior of the children and the men that they called the police and reported these guys. And remember that this was reported in, I think, early 1987. And that's important because 1987, no one was wagging cell phones around in parks like they would be today and able to call. So the behavior was obviously unsettling enough for someone to make a note of all this, get the license plate number, write all this down, go find a phone booth or whatever and call the police on these guys. And when the cops showed up to check out and see what was going on, the children, who were not the children of the two guys, were all taken into into custody and taken to like a group home or something for evaluation. And the two guys were immediately taken into police custody and exhibited really bizarre behavior. But they were like in suits, whereas the children were like almost like feral children. And the original document said the children didn't even understand like basic things like how toilets worked or how telephones worked or anything like that. And one of the guys, when he was arrested, produced a card that said he was pleading the fifth and refused to answer any questions. And when the police started looking into these guys and checking all this out down in Florida, they were contacting where the van was registered and everything and it was in Washington, D.C., and the Metro PD in D.C. said, hey, this is great. Now we have probable cause to raid the warehouse that these guys came from. We've been wanting to do this for ages. So thank you very much. So they raided the warehouse and wound up with trash bags full of child exploitation pictures. Let me put it that way. And ritualistic child exploitation pictures. All kinds of things. Some messed up stuff was retrieved from this warehouse, as well as very sophisticated computer equipment. And again, this is 1987, so this is pre-internet, and these guys had very advanced communication equipment. And they had sent out a warning that these guys had been arrested and everybody else needed to lay low. So very strange things. And then right about the time they were digging all this stuff up and coming up with pretty solid abuse that the children had been molested, the home that the children were taken to, the like group home where they were taken, started receiving strange phone calls and like death threats, even though it was unlisted and no one should have known where the kids were. And then out of the blue, after all this stuff is going down and they're again retrieving massive like trash bags full of evidence, of really damning evidence, suddenly the investigation was shut down, and some of the leaked documents said that some of the guys involved said that this was now a CIA internal matter and they were to take no further action. And the investigators were upset enough that they leaked some of the documents and wound up in the hands of guys like this. So big thanks to Craig Roberts for publishing it and boosting that signal a little bit back then when he published this. This was originally published in probably I'm thinking the late 90s, but let me just double check that. 1997. So definitely in 1997, this was not something people knew about. I found this book on Amazon, again, like around 2012 or 13 or so. But excellent book, a lot of good articles on a lot of different things. And Mr. Roberts, Craig Roberts there, has actually commented on one of my reviews on his books. He chimed in, so maybe he'll be out there and pop up in the comment section. It'd be great if he did. He seems like a solid dude. I would definitely like to talk to him. Now, moving right along. Now we're getting into some weird stuff. This is another compilation book, again, by multiple authors. This is ClimateGate, The Marijuana Conspiracy, Project Bluebeam, and Other True Stories. And the main reason I got this was any information about Project Bluebeam is difficult to come by. And this has a good article about Project Bluebeam. And by Sergey or Monast, I believe, yes, on page 89. And there's some other good stuff in this too, but that's the main one that I got the book for. And the whole thing with Project Bluebeam, that and there's wild debates about, like so many of these topics, about whether or not this is even a thing. But Serge Monast claimed that he had stumbled onto this secret program, and this was all early 90s when he was writing a lot of his stuff. And this, by the way, was published well after he had died. He died under strange circumstances too, 2010. But he claims that he had stumbled onto this program called Project Bluebeam that was a program that was going to use high technology, both holographic technology as well as like a lot of the voice-to-skull, what they call synthetic telepathy kind of stuff, beaming voices into people's heads to simulate this massive world religious event. And this would be used to possibly to fake an alien invasion, but more importantly, to bring about this world-changing fake religious event that would then unify everyone as a single one-world religion. And this seeming to be like the voice of God or the voice of Jesus or whatever would be heard by everyone, directing them to understand that they had gotten these things wrong. These man-made holy books had gotten these things wrong, that had sent people in all these other directions and then unified them together. But this would all be done through the use of very advanced holographic equipment and voice to skull and that sort of thing. And that's what a lot of the UFO technology and all that was actually being developed by the government to implement something along those lines. And he also claimed, I don't think it's in this particular article, but he was also one of the ones that believed that a lot of the strange UFO and abduction phenomenon and things like that were happening at that time in the late 80s, early 90s in like northern New Mexico and southern Colorado were actually kind of testing this technology on some of these rural mountainous areas that are very isolated, especially like these Indian tribal areas that were very isolated, and that those tribal communities are considered sovereign territories. So there's certain things you can do that are in violation of international treaties, but on tribal land, because it's technically sovereign land, you can get away with stuff there that you can't do elsewhere. So it's one of those weird little loopholes around certain treaties, especially like chemical warfare and things like that. So if you are curious about Project Bluebeam, this is definitely a good one to get for that. Consensus Trance. Now, this is another one that is from, let's see, I think 2015. I mainly got this because it has something about Project Monarch in it. It has several good articles, but the main one that I got it for, there's Secret Weather Wars, The Shocking True History, Human Medical Experimentation in the U.S., What Really Happened to Pont Saint-Esprit, and the Drug Story, Population Control, And then thanks for the memory or whatever. It's a funky spelling there. But that is by Walter Boart. And Walter Boart is the author of Operation Mind Control, one of the first kind of mainstream books about the CIA using mind control for assassins and that sort of thing, or brainwashing people involved in secret programs. So this is a follow-up to an article to his original work, and mainly about a woman that he believes was a victim of a mind control program that's sometimes referred to as Monarch. So excellent article there. Walter Boart's another one of those guys that I think he passed away in the early 2000s, like 2003, maybe 2007. But he wrote Operation Mind Control, and I also have his researcher's edition of that somewhere around here as well. Really good stuff. He does step around a few things, but I think overall his research is pretty good. Now, this is one, I know I've covered this in some other book lists. Obviously, there's a couple of these I know I've covered before, but this is definitely worth having some overlap here. Into the Buzzsaw is an excellent book, especially if you're kind of on the fence about some of the material, especially like on my channel, about some of these subjects of going, how could someone hide that? Like, if that was true, it'd be all over the news. Well, this book is for you. Into the Buzzsaw, this is a compilation of different authors who were all pushed out of the mainstream press because they ran with certain stories they were not supposed to. And this is edited by Christina Borgeson. I think this was originally published in 2001, 2002. And I actually heard her interviewed on the local NPR station in Dallas in spring of 2002. And the funny thing was, back then, in NPR in Dallas was a lot better than it is now. I mean, it still most definitely had its biases, but there was a lot better programming on. And the funny thing was, it was during a pledge drive. And during pledge drives, any of you that have listened to NPR over the years, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of times in pledge drives, that's where they really, they will actually allow things like this to be on some of the shows, or at least they used to, in order to get you to keep tuning in through the pledge drive, because it's like slowly listening to someone drowning to death, and you want to just shut it off and not listen to it. But anyway, Into the Buzzsaw has some excellent articles by Gary Webb of the guy that exposed the selling of cocaine in the inner city by the CIA. Let's see. And Christina Borgeson, her article is all about the, I'm trying to think of the plane that went down. It was the one that let me see, I apologize for this. I'm going to actually pull up her deal really quick because I want to get this right. This is one of those things that's come up on this channel a few times. Okay, yeah, this was from TWA Flight 800, and that was what caused her to get pushed out of the mainstream reporting world. And that plane, TWA Flight 800, once it took off and was flying out, it was going on a transatlantic flight, a lot of people reported seeing a missile go up from the water and hit the plane, and it blew up. And that whole account, even I think there was at least one picture somebody had taken. Of course, this is before digital pictures. Somebody took a picture and of that had the missile going up to it. And that was immediately shot down, no pun intended, and the story was totally redone to be this really strange fuel tank accident. And when you look at some of the diagrams of how they claim it went down, it's bizarre. And I ran into, after reading this, around 2012 or 13 or so, I had a customer come in one time that we got to talking about this kind of material, and he claimed to have been in the Navy, and he claimed to have actually heard the radio chatter about when they accidentally shot this plane. He claims that it was accidentally shot down, that it was a missile test being done that they didn't make sure they had cleared the area, and they accidentally shot down a passenger plane. And then everything else happened to cover that up. But that is but one of several really good stories in here. Gary Webb's material is in here. Excellent articles in this. Probably the most, one of the most important ones in it, not necessarily the most sensational, but probably the most important article in this is written by, let's see if I can, it's this husband and wife team that was down in Florida that were reporting on Monsanto and I'm trying to think of the, it's the, oh, I apologize here again. They were reporting on the use of the bovine growth hormone. That's what it is. And the bovine growth hormone, okay, and that is chapter 2, The Fox, the Hounds, and the Sacred Cows by Jane Aker. And excellent article. If for no other reason, get the book for that article, because it's all about her and her husband and all that they went through when they were hired to be investigative reporters for Fox News. And this was not the cable Fox News. This was back when Fox was had affiliate stations, and it was a local Fox channel in Florida that hired them as investigative reporters to do investigative reporting locally. And one of the first stories they were working on was the use of bovine growth hormone and the connection to cancer. And as soon as they uncovered all this and started to connect the dots, and they were just about to air this episode, and the lawyers for the television station said, "You can't do that." And they wound up telling them to basically back off of everything they were doing. And long story short, they wound up being fired for refusing to lie. And they actually got it in writing. And because they had it in writing, they were able to then sue the Fox affiliate for being asked to lie on the news. And they won. They won on the grounds of being whistleblower. They were able to get whistleblower status, and were able to win a pretty decent judgment against Fox News, or Fox, for being asked to lie. And this is where it gets crazy. And this is why this article is so important, and that case is so important. Fox appealed the case. And they were joined in their appeal by Belo Corp, Newsweek, like all these other major press outlets. So it wasn't just Fox, it was like everybody in mainstream press, anyone who was anyone, joined in that appeal against them to fight that ruling. And they won. And they won on the grounds that the lawyers said in the appeal, there is no law that requires a news station to tell the truth. And on that, based on that, they had their whistleblower status revoked, the judgment reversed, and everything went away. So remember that every time you think, well, if that was true, I would have heard it on the news. And there you go. So excellent information on that. And again, a good spectrum of authors, both left and right, that is a good starting point for a lot of other research. Now, this is one that I just got in when I was in Dallas last week, and picked this up. This is Conspiracy Facts, Neocons Unmasked, and this is by Cushman Cunningham. I don't know if that's an alias or what, but these are all just articles by various authors about the neocons, about the Federal Reserve, and a little bit of everything. I've only read a little bit of it so far, but I thought it was good enough to warrant a place in this video. Mainly because the mention of the Federal Reserve and a lot of the banking shenanigans. To me, the Federal Reserve is one of those things that once you understand the Federal Reserve and how that works and how money works and that it's owned by a private banking cartel, that, like, everything else pales in comparison. Because to me, until you fix that, and you fix the fact that we are currently paying interest on the use of our own money, until you end the Fed, so to speak, you can't really have justice in any other capacity, because it's going to drive so many other things. So, and once you understand the way the Fed works and the way our money works, all the things, the boom and bust, inflation cycles and all that will make a lot more sense to you. So I'm going more into other things about the Fed, but this has some excellent articles on the Fed. There's also a good article on Gaddafi in here, and after he was neutralized, shall we say. Good stuff on the Iraq War, just all kinds of interesting stuff in there. And this was published in 2015. So fairly up to date on some of that stuff, but good compilation book. And this is definitely one, after I give it a thorough working over here, I will be back to it. But yeah, Eustace Mullins, Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, all the main players. And again, it's one of those things where I know when you say an author like Eustace Mullins, there's going to be people, oh no, and tune out. And remember that there are people all across the political spectrum that are able to see things that if you are locked in your in your little partisan corner or your partisan area, it might be really hard to see some of the other people as the truth tellers they are. So it really helps. Some books like this really help kind of break you out of that Hegelian dialectic, or that left-right paradigm of thinking, oh, it has to be the Democrats or it has to be the Republicans, and doggone it, the libertarians are coming to save me. So anyway, excellent compilation book. Now, last but not least, this is Mind-Controlled SEX Slaves and the CIA. And this is written by this author right here. I can't say the name or this video will get a strike, but there's the author. Someone said, I thought of this book the other day because someone asked me if this book is the same as the new version that apparently has like a Barbie doll on the cover. I have no idea. I haven't bought that one, so maybe it might be worth, basically the way I use my ad revenue from this channel and membership money is to buy books. So I might just buy that copy, and that way I can save all of you the trouble. I can get that and then compare the two, and we can see if there's any difference in those two. But this is a good series of articles about the Monarch program, MK Ultra, and things like that. My only complaint with this book is it contains an article by Elizabeth Loftus, who was one of the big movers and shakers in the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. And that whole bunch was highly suspect. Every one of them had children that were accusing them of very, very bad things. And then they just happened to come together to form this group to accuse everyone else of having false memories. So the fact that they gave her any airtime, so to speak, in this book is a little disturbing, but there's still some good articles in here. So definitely worth checking out. And then, of course, the funny thing about this, I have to kind of sneak this book into other videos, because saying this author's name and some of the things that happened to her, and if you research her untimely end, she passed under mysterious circumstances. At the same time, there was a lot of the postafence stuff happening, which you can go down in the comment section, see what postafence means. And as a result of that, when I went to review this book originally a couple of years ago, actually probably been about 3 years ago, this review was up for maybe a few hours, maybe a day tops, and then it got pulled, and I got a strike against my channel for encouraging violence. So, which is crazy, because on my channel I've reviewed the John Minery, I think that's it, John Minery series like How to Kill, which is literally a manual on physical violence for like allegedly for contract killers and that sort of thing. That one hasn't gotten me a strike. This one got me a strike. So make of that whatever you will, but this is an interesting book, and for no other reason than the editor or author of some of the articles and her strange past. Now, a good runner-up. This is a good one if you've got do you have a budding conspiracy theorist in your family? This is an excellent book. I got this one thinking, oh, this is going to be just bubblegum garbage. But this was actually really good, and I've reviewed this elsewhere on the channel. This one, I believe, actually has an article about the USS Liberty. It covers a lot of stuff about organized crime. There's an article about using atomic weapons to create tsunamis. Some excellent material in this. And it's really well done. I mean, good high, color pictures and just lots of good stuff in here. So I was pleasantly surprised. Anytime I see something that's done this slick and nice looking, I don't expect much. But this actually had some pretty good articles in it. And just for those curious, since I'm already running into overtime now, this is from 2005. This has stuff on the My Lai massacre and the involvement of Colin Powell. A lot of stuff about, again, ritual activities of like organized crime and just lots of good stuff in here. And Hollywood and their involvement in movies, but just anyway, lots of good stuff in here. Sorry, I'm not showing you what all's in here, but excellent stuff. And again, like so many other of these compilation books, there are some articles in here that I'm kind of like, yes, but still excellent place to start and a good jumping off material, especially that. And just to wrap it all up, that's one of the best things about some of these compilation or essay books like this is there's a lot of these cases that you may never have heard about, and rightfully so. A lot of this stuff is very well suppressed in the mainstream press. So some of the stuff you got to really dig for, and a lot of these are good entry points to some of these topics, and a great way to learn about authors you hadn't heard about before. So I will wrap it up there. Also, I will say, also kind of in the runner-up category is the Project Censored series of books. And you can pick these up super cheap on Amazon. Some of these you can pick up for just basically the cost of shipping. And there's some older ones right up until about 2019, 2020 or so. It was actually a really good series. But when COVID came around, the 2020, Project Censored 2020, 2021, those should be chock full of stuff, but they are not. And I did a video a while back where I said kind of rest in peace, Project Censored, because COVID really killed it, because they were always tended to be more left-leaning in their approach, but they had no desire to even look into any of the problems with some of that. So anyway, I will stop there, but there you go. There are 10 compilation books of essays with lots of good material, and I tried to get an assortment of a lot of different topics so that you have a lot to choose from there. And I know some of you might have heard of these, some you may not have heard of, but again, mainly wanted to just introduce you to some new topics. Great way to find some new authors. And I couldn't tell you how, there's a lot of books in my library that have come about from exactly this kind of starting point. So hope you all are all having a good Thanksgiving holiday. Right now it's Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. So here in the States, we're about to take some time off tomorrow for Thanksgiving. So hope you all have a great day tomorrow. Hope everybody's doing well, and I hope this is a bit of a palate cleanser from some of the more spicy content I posted lately. So again, thanks for subscribing and thanks for supporting the channel.